Welcome to Bigfoot Society. This episode, we take out of the archives to share an older interview with Mary Fabian from the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. It's a fantastic episode, not just about Pennsylvania, but also Oklahoma as well. You're sure to enjoy it if you haven't heard it already. If this reminds you of any Bigfoot encounters you've had or that you've heard of, please reach out to me immediately, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Love to talk to you. If you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to, there is if you become a supporting member over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. New members only episode every week. Now, let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Mary Fabian from the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project tonight. How's it going, Mary?
It's going great.
Oh, I am excited to have you on tonight and talk about your 50 years of Bigfoot research experience. I was able to get a copy of your book, What I've Learned About Bigfoot, 50 Years and Counting, and it's fascinating. You have had stuff happen literally your entire life. It's a great read. It's definitely going to be a link for that in the show notes so people can check that out. But is there anything else that the listeners should know for context about you, Mary, besides that you've been into Bigfoot a whole ton?
The book, it's 50 years and counting. There were a few decades in there where I did not have any Bigfoot experience. I was just a normal mom, housewife, etc. But whenever I did have an encounter, a sighting whenever I was a child. And then things picked up again after a couple of decades, and I moved into a certain area. And after that, it's been boom.
So let's start back at the beginning. That's always the best place to start. What was it that first got you into Bigfoot at the beginning, Mary?
It would have been my first sighting, my first encounters. I was 11 years old and just walking along a gas line and saw a Bigfoot. And then later on, maybe a couple years later, we were camping, my family and I were camping up in the mountains of southwestern Pennsylvania. And I had encounters. I saw structures, tree structures, had rocks thrown at me, tree limbs thrown at me. And I was just a kid. I had no idea what was going on, what was doing it. Between that and my sighting, it sparked a curiosity to learn. And along with my dad talking about the wild man or the hairy man. And he really didn't get too much into it. I honestly have no idea if he had seen one or not. He never specifically said if he had, but he did talk about it. And that interest in the paranormal in general sparked as a teenager and continued. And then later on in 2004, whenever I remarried and moved to Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and started having some other Bigfoot encounters and experiences and sightings, that's whenever it was okay. Let's learn more about Bigfoot. And just digging in and searching for other people, really. And that was hard, searching for people in my area who were experiencing things also. No one would talk. So I reached out a little bit further and found Facebook groups and people on Facebook who were talking about it. But then what they were experiencing really didn't match what I was, and it honestly didn't make any sense. But I did find a group of guys down south in Alabama. They were scattered through the South, and called the Bigfoot Outlaws. I joined their group, talked with them. This makes perfect sense. What they were saying, it matched what I was experiencing and learning and going through, and what I knew about that particular Bigfoot who was coming around my home, because it was, at that time, there was a Bigfoot harassing me at my house, at my home. Every time he would come around, I was learning more about him, his behavior, how to handle him in particular, and different things, the timing and so on. I made friends with the guys at Bigfoot Outlaws, and a few of them still remain friends now.
And one of those gentlemen is Coonbo
Yes.
Baker, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. He is my mentor. Calls me every so often, and he'll say, "You want to come out to Oklahoma or somewhere and go on a research trip?" And I say, "Heck yeah."
All right. We're going to talk about that later, because that's going to be amazing. But I want to not overly skip over the foundational stuff. There was a lot said in that intro story, which is amazing. Thankfully, I've read your book, so I know some of the details as well. Your first, I believe, your first encounter happened in summer of 1967, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Was that in Southwest Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Okay.
Allegheny County.
Okay. Chestnut Ridge area?
Nearby, not quite, but near it. Maybe a little bit north of it runs into Westmoreland and Fayette County in the south of Pennsylvania and in southwestern Pennsylvania. And I was maybe 40 miles north of there. But we did go into the Chestnut Ridge quite often. We would camp there.
Do you remember a lot about that first encounter when you were 11 in 1967? What the creature looked like, or what kind of thing you were dealing with?
Well, what happened was I was walking along a gas line, and I was going down a hill into a holler, and on the opposite side, there were woods on the right and a field overgrown with brush on my left. And the Bigfoot came out of the woods to my right and started across the trail that I was hiking on. And he just stopped and looked at me. Now, at this time, I had never heard about Bigfoot, never seen or experienced anything about. The only thing that I knew about a big hairy creature was what I had seen on TV about the Siberian snowman. And that was it, the Yeti. Yeah, that was all we knew at that time. And I had no idea what this was. All I saw and thought was, this is a big, hairy man wearing a fur coat in the middle of summer. And no, he was big and hairy, but he wasn't wearing a coat. The coat was part of him. He was completely black. The details of his face, all I can recall is that he had what I knew of as Neanderthal features. And that's about the only way that I could describe his features. He didn't act mean towards me. He didn't act aggressive. He didn't do anything threatening. He just stopped and looked at me. And then he just turned and continued walking into the brush in the field opposite from us. It made me wonder, okay, what was that about? But then I continued on. But the thing is, that encounter with this big, hairy man wearing a fur coat, it stuck in my memory, for decades, until it connected many years later as to what it actually was that I had seen.
The fascinating detail about that encounter, and I'm sure most listeners have made the connection, but it's crazy how your first encounter took place a few months before the Patterson-Gimlin filming in October of 1967, and yours happened in the summer. So it makes sense how you would say you didn't have that to fall back on as having seen, because it wasn't even filmed yet.
No.
Do you remember the first time you saw that film as a young child, or maybe as a high schooler?
I really couldn't say exactly when I saw it. My sister and I would always go to the movies, to the movie theater. And so it would have had to have run between movies or something, I'm certain. But specifically when, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Also, you mentioned that the creature had Neanderthal features, and I found that very interesting. Could you describe exactly what you meant by Neanderthal features?
I would say that the heavy brow, the brow ridge. But I think other than that, he had a lighter skin tone, not quite Caucasian, maybe tanned, but lighter skin tone underneath the facial hair.
Interesting. I've talked to a few people that have had sightings as younger children. It's amazing how it's burned into your memory over the years. Because I get a lot of feedback where people are like, oh, come on, people aren't going to they're not going to remember something that happened to them when they're 11. And I think if you had something like that happen to you when you were 10 or 11, you'd be remembering that, because it's probably something that you would see when you close your eyes at night.
It wasn't traumatic. It was just something about it that did stick in my memory, which honestly is strange, because you would think, oh, okay, I'm hiking along a path and running into a woodsman or something while I'm hiking. But no, this stuck. It stuck in my memory.
Do you remember anything about its feet, or were you able to see it actually walk or move away from you at all? Anything like that?
Yeah, I did watch him walk away, but honestly, I can't remember. I wouldn't be able to give you any specifics about his walk.
No problem.
Unfortunately.
No problem. I also find it interesting how you mentioned that you've also went camping multiple times in the Chestnut Ridge area, which some crazy stories have come out of that area over the years, Stan Gordon, things like that. But
oh yeah,
did anything out of the ordinary happen to you when you went camping in that Chestnut Ridge area of southwestern Pennsylvania?
Where we would camp was behind the French and Indian War fort that George Washington had built back during, before the Revolutionary War, called Fort Necessity. And there was a campground back behind the fort. The campground is no longer there. Right now it's picnic grounds, but really no one uses it. It's pretty much deserted and overgrown. But at that time, it was a beautiful campground, and it was packed during that period of time. That was around, let me think, 69 through 72, I'm thinking, is whenever we would go up there in camp. And every time we would go, first thing right after breakfast, I would jump out of the trailer or the camper and just run out into the woods and go explore. I'd follow whatever game trails I could find and just walk for miles and not return until right before dark, and just exploring the whole mountain, which was great. I loved it up there. But the only unusual thing, though, that would happen would be that I would run into these strange, what we know now as tree structures. But whenever I saw them back then, I could tell that they were unusual, that they were not natural, that they were logs and tree limbs deliberately placed in an intricate pattern. And it was obvious, even to a kid. Occasionally around those structures, I would be hiking and rocks would be thrown at me or tree limbs would get thrown at me. I took it as, okay, I'm trespassing onto somebody's territory. And so I would just put up my hands and say, okay, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go back. Oh. Apparently I wasn't wanted there. You got to respect someone's territory.
Yeah, because at that point, you're not even thinking of, oh, this is Bigfoot. You're just like, someone, I better be cautious because someone is not happy with me. I think that's a smart move, what you did as a younger person there.
You run into my mother was from West Virginia and she had hillbilly relatives. Yeah, you got to be careful of others' territory.
Who knows what you'll stumble upon out in the woods for sure. Oh, man. I would love to fast forward a bit to where you're saying that there's a point where you're starting to get harassed by a Bigfoot. I'm curious what it means to be harassed by a creature like that. What exactly is happening?
Well, in 2004, I remarried and moved about 40 miles north of where I previously lived and up into Beaver County with my husband in his home. And just about immediately, activity would start. Something would beat on the wall right behind my head where I was laying in bed sleeping. And the first time that happened, I heard the single pound whack on the wall right behind my head. And then I heard a strange garbled language, something talking, two creatures talking to each other. And that's what we know now as the samurai chatter. Whenever I heard Ron Moorhead's recordings, then I recognized it as being samurai chatter. It was just that in a very deep, gravelly voice. It was similar to that. Whenever I would be sleeping, something would, like every 2.5 to 3 weeks, something would come around and whack the wall if I was asleep, right behind my head. Or else if I was awake and sitting out in the family room watching TV, it would come up to the patio door and peek in the windows and so on. But initially, I wouldn't see it and I wouldn't be aware of it. My dog would let me know that it was there. Now, I'm not certain if I had sent you a photo of her or not, but she would lay by that back door constantly, always watching out that back door. And now I know why. That was her at her guard post, always watching for him whenever he would come around. But the way she would react really upset me as to how she would react, that is. But she would react in a specific way that was just frankly terrified. We had gotten her from a rescue. She was a border collie, and we were very slowly getting her back into gaining confidence in herself and gaining her voice and being happy around humans, us as her family. But whenever he would come by, she would be laying there at the door, facing the door, and she would give a very soft mixture of a soft growl and a whine, very soft. And her hackles would go up and her tail tucked, and she would crawl backwards until she was huddled up against my legs, just shaking in fear, just total terror. And this would go on every time he would come around. And of course, at first it would freak me out. What's going on? What's scaring her? Because she wasn't afraid of anything that would come around the yard. I thought, I'm not going to put up with this. Whatever's going on, I would bring my pistol and put it next to me and thinking, okay, whatever's out there, let's see what's going on. But at first, I wouldn't go out to see. But after a while, I figured out what it was. Yeah, because I think the one time I'd seen him peeking up over the wall at me, I was out in the backyard and I saw him. He was just looking. All I saw was head and shoulders up. And the sun was right behind him, so he was silhouetted. I couldn't make out any features, but all I could see was his hair, which was a beautiful golden reddish gold color and sparkling in the sunshine. It was very pretty. But whenever I saw him, I wagged my finger at him. I said, I see you. And he ducked his head down and scurried away. And but after that, the next time that he came around and would terrify her, I just snapped. I was angry, to say the least. And I jumped up, ran out the door, grabbed a golf club that I had sitting there, and I ran out the door after him, chasing after him and calling him names and saying, don't you come around anymore, you big bully. And I was just angry because he was bullying my dog, and I wasn't going to put up with that.
It's never fun when something you love gets bullied, for sure. I can understand that. Did things get better for you after you reacted like that, or did they get worse?
No, he still came around. Yeah, same as usual. Yeah, the thing was, at first, we had security lights in the back of the house that were motion sensitive. They would trigger whenever an animal come through the yard. And every so often I would go out there and I would see that they had been moved so they wouldn't trigger. And I would tell my husband and I would say, why do you keep moving these lights? I need these to point out so they'll trigger whenever this comes around. And he told me he'd never moved them. We lived in a ranch home. It was a low ranch home. So for an 8-foot creature, they were easily reachable. And what he would do, he would come up alongside of the house, just huddle up against the house and then reach up and move it. That's what I figure that he did. So it wouldn't alert me. There was no light that would come on to alert me about. The only thing that alerted me was my dog.
Did you ever find any tracks around the house?
Not around the house. The ground was very hard and not good ground around the house. But I did find tracks on the hill behind the house. There was a game trail that cut down above the house. I followed it up the hill and I found a few tracks and I sent those to you also. Those tracks, though, they were smaller, maybe 9 to 10 inches long. They weren't full adult ones. Those were juveniles. So apparently that was a nursery up on the hill. On the other side of that hill was the Beaver River, a very deep river valley, very steep hills. There's old mines along there, old caves that you'd have to be a real mountain climber to get down there, into those. So I never got down into there.
Remind me, you still at that residence then, or you at a different place now?
Yeah, we moved in 2016.
Yeah.
So that went on for 12 years. And we moved a little bit further out in the country. And we built a new home here. And while we were building the home, I would check around the foundation. And I found footprints around the foundation. I found structures. So I knew they were around here. But fortunately, they don't bother us here. They ignore me, which is no problem with me. I tried my doggone not to draw their attention.
Do you ever hear any vocalizations or anything else sound-wise that would make you think they're in the area as well?
Yeah. I hear vocals late at night whenever we have another dog now. The one we had at the other house, she passed away, but we have another border collie now. I'll take her out late at night and I'll hear vocals, not constantly, just especially in the early part of the year around February, March, I'll hear vocals. Later on in the summer, like into the early fall, I'll hear more vocals. And usually that's a high-pitched call or a whistle. What they'll do and what I hear is a whistle, and then I'll hear the coyotes start yapping. And then all of a sudden you hear a sudden yip, and a coyote has been killed.
Wow. Yeah, you really think that he's just probably getting annoyed and time to show him who's boss, maybe. I don't know.
It's possible, or else they hunt them for the organ meat. Before the spring greens come up, they'll go after whatever game that they're catching, and they'll usually eat the organ meat for the rich proteins. And because we were in Tennessee with Coonbo and the Outlaws back in 2017, and one of the people in our party found a coyote that a Bigfoot had killed, and it was very obvious that what had killed it, because this coyote was literally twisted like a pretzel.
That is so interesting. I've talked to a gentleman in Montana. There was an experience where I believe it was a grizzly that had its neck snapped. Obviously, it had to be something with hands. And it sounds like you encountered something similar on a smaller form.
Yeah, like I said, the head is pointing one way, and the shoulders or front legs are the other way, and the back legs are twisted this way, and it's quite gruesome and really obvious what killed it, because whatever had it had to have had hands, opposable thumbs, and twisting like an old dish rag.
Next questions might get a little bit intense, so listeners, be advised. I am really curious, was it just twisted and left there, or did it actually eat parts of, you could tell, okay, this part is missing because it was eaten by the creature? Anything like that?
No, it was just twisted and left there after it was killed. I don't think the people who found it were able to, I don't think they looked deeply enough to see if any organs or anything had been removed. I don't think so, going by the photo, because she did take a photo of it. And I've studied that photo quite deeply, and I don't see any sign of any cuts or bite marks or anything. It's just twisted.
Makes you almost wonder if it was to send a message, if there's these Sasquatch coyote pack warring factions in some areas of the US. Who knows? That's me imagining, but that would be wild. Has there ever been a point when you're out doing field research and something happens that you're like, this is just a little bit too intense, that I don't really want to be where I am right now? I'd rather be back home with my dog.
Oh, yeah. Occasionally I'll go into an area. Like a few years ago, there's a park near here, maybe a half an hour from me, Moraine State Park. And I was hiking along a trail, and just all of a sudden, it's a feeling of intense danger, of just stop, don't go any further, that it just hit me all of a sudden. And so I thought to myself, okay, I respect this. I'm not going any further. So what I did do, though, I stopped and took a series of photos with my camera in a 180-degree arc to possibly capture something there. And then I left. And a little bit later on, I was able to study those photos, and I possibly had caught something up in a tree. I'm not certain. It's very pixelated. I see a face that could possibly be a primate looking face. I'm not saying it was a small one or not. I don't know. But I caught something there.
Wow. Very interesting. When people ask Mary, what is Bigfoot? What is your answer to that?
I go by science and evidence, and Dr. Melba Ketchum's DNA, her genome project. And from my own observations of primate behavior, a mixture between gorilla, chimpanzee, and human, something in between there is what I have observed. And then Dr. Ketchum's DNA test, they showed non-human primate, human, and then something else, which she identified as Nephilim. And a little bit later on, I was able, at least in my mind, I confirmed to myself that the Nephilim DNA is there. Primarily because a trip that I had taken out to Oklahoma with Coonbo and a bunch of other researchers. Coonbo was experimenting with what's called a shofar.
It's like a curved horn, correct?
Yes. Yeah. It's a ram's horn.
Thank you.
And the Hebrews used it in celebration and victory, in war. Joshua used it whenever he was marching around the walls of Jericho to bring the walls of Jericho down, which kind of tells you something there also. The frequency, the blast, constant blast in a certain frequency, the power that has. And the specific shofar that Coonbo had was I'm not going to say what kind it was because I honestly can't remember, but it was a specific type. And whenever he would blow it, they wouldn't respond all the time. It was only whenever Coonbo was able to reach a certain range on that horn, on the shofar. In that certain range, that's whenever they would respond. I know the one night we were in an area that we nicknamed Purgatory. We were down there. It's a historic area with some violent history between Bigfoot and other cryptids and humans. Pretty dangerous area that it just gave out really bad vibes whenever we were down there. But while we were there, this was around midnight, Coonbo blew the shofar and he was able to reach that certain frequency. And we got a response from 3 different Bigfoot, 3 different directions. From a couple miles out, one roared and the other one roared from miles away in another direction. Then another one roared from another direction. And then they would roar again, and you could tell they were getting closer. They were coming in pretty hot and fast, roaring all the way. and they were not happy. And that you could tell they were coming in on us. And thank God we had a pretty good sized group of about 14 researchers. We had about 7 pickup trucks in there that we were standing around. And whenever the Bigfoot came in, the 3 of them, they stopped about 50 yards out, and they were back behind some brush and trees, but we could see shadows. We could see their eye shine and everything, and hear little things now and then told us where they were. That was a pretty hairy night. But yeah, what they did, though, like I said, they stopped. And the feeling that I got was that they were waiting. They were waiting for a further signal or something else to do something else. I don't know. But whenever that signal didn't come, they just went away. And we knew that they weren't there anymore. And it was like, whew.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack from that. That's intense, Mary.
It was, yes. It was very intense. My older sister was with us, and she had never had a Bigfoot experience before.
That was the first one for her.
That was, to tell you the truth, she was completely unaware. She was in the back of the truck, too afraid to come out no matter where we were. And I think she was just in there either sleeping or playing on her phone.
Oh, my goodness.
But my thought was always I had to stay by the truck to protect her. And I don't know what I could have done, but
I'm going to ask some questions, and you're welcome to decline them. Was that in Southeast Oklahoma?
Yes.
Was that in LaFleur County?
To be honest, I don't know what county that was in.
That's all right.
No, that was not. Yeah.
Okay. Man, that sounds wild. Why do you think they responded to the horn like that?
With their Nephilim DNA, they would have to.
For listeners that aren't overly familiar with religious texts, can you describe I don't know if you have an easy way to describe exactly when you think of a Nephilim, what we're dealing with?
A Nephilim is you look back in Genesis, in the Old Testament, and I know there's people who don't believe in the Bible, who think of it as fairy tale, and then there's other people who look at it as a history book, which it is. It's a history book as well as religious text. The Nephilim were the product of a mating between fallen angels who disobeyed God and came down to earth and mated with human women. And what the women bore was the Nephilim. And so the Nephilim, they have angelic DNA along with the human DNA, which Dr. Ketchum was able to identify. People have asked me, how do you know? Yeah, where did she get Nephilim DNA? How can you identify Nephilim DNA? A friend of mine, in a totally different conversation, told me that whenever they went to get testing done, their doctor told them that they had Nephilim DNA.
Okay.
And I will not go further than that.
Yeah, I mean that there's some stories there, but they probably won't be shared, I'm guessing. Wow. I'm just going to ask, you can decline. So what, it was for a regular medical visit or for testing of a Bigfoot hair?
No, it was medical, for medical reasons.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
That's intense. Wow. And the doctor just busted that out. Oh, man. Wow. Yeah.
So you know that they have Nephilim DNA.
Wow. Do you think then there's some Bigfoot that are half Nephilim, or they're actually Nephilim and we're calling them Bigfoot? Or what do you think about that?
There's some people that have encounters where it's a physical creature and they have just regular Bigfoot encounters, if you can call it regular. And then there's other people who describe their encounters as being more in the paranormal range, where they say the Bigfoot hop through portals, or they come in on the mist and they do strange magical things. Now, whenever I hear those stories, my mind goes to the demonic rather than the physical Bigfoot. Because the Bigfoot who hop through portals and what they call interdimensionals, the things that they do around these people border on demonic, quite frankly. And I've warned a friend of mine about what was going on, and I told her, you've invited them onto your property. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do something to get them away, perhaps speak with a medium or something who can help you.
How does one invite a demonic Bigfoot onto their property?
You think that they're Bigfoot and you think, oh, how wonderful, I'm going to have a relationship with these wonderful creatures. And that's your first clue, relationship. On the normal basis, you're not going to have a relationship, friends, going up and shaking their hands or greeting them or talking to them and have them talk to you. That's not going to happen unless they are on that other demonic side.
Do you think there can be ever situations where, let's say you have your house, you have some acres of land, and you have Bigfoot living there as well? Can there ever be situations like that where it's an actual, like there's a happy ending? Or will it always end up in you don't want to leave out food for them type deal?
With the flesh and blood Bigfoot that I've had my experiences with, yeah, they just want to be left alone. They want to be respected. They want their territory to be respected. They want to raise their families and just be left in peace. They don't want a relationship. They just want to be left alone. And sometimes, occasionally, you'll run into a nasty one who, like the one who came around my house, who just wants to play games and because they're bored or whatever. And that's usually the young males. They'll come around and like teenagers, they're bored. But once they get older, no, They just want to be left alone. But I highly advise anyone never, ever put food out. You don't want to do that.
Let's say there's a listener where they've been putting food out and they've noticed some weird stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there anything they can do to get out of that situation? Or is it just buckle up for the ride? You may want to move.
Yeah, once you begin and they start taking food on a regular basis, you're pretty much stuck, because if you stop, they will act very vindictively. They may come into your home, and they have been known to come into homes looking for food. They'll kill your pets, your livestock. Whenever you do something like that, it's endangering your pets, your livestock, your family, your neighbors. It's a dangerous situation that I cannot emphasize enough, that once people start it, don't stop, because that's whenever they'll start destroying things. But even then, they still may come into your home looking for food.
Have you heard reports of that actually happening, where they will come into your home as they get more used to the area and I'm going to find more food?
Yeah. I've heard quite a few stories about that. Bear will do the same. You start feeding bears. Yeah, they'll come in. They'll come in looking for more food. They'll break into homes. They break into vehicles. It's dangerous. People have talked to me about it, asking what they can do. And I just advise them to, there's really not much you can do. You made the mistake of starting. You honestly can't stop. Just beware, watch, guard your house, guard your family. It's a bad situation. I've known a few people who have moved away.
Wow.
It's trying to escape that. But then the thing is, whoever purchases their home have now been put into a dangerous situation that they have no knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to a person where it's, I have no idea what's going on. I moved into this house and I am just getting messed up by something. I have no idea what's going on here.
Yeah, I've spoken with a few people. One person that I spoke with figured it out fairly quickly what was going on. His daughter, I think his little girl was maybe 10 years old, something like that. Yeah, she was in a lot of danger. And he was able to do a few things to keep them, at least have a mutual respect, somewhat, that they wouldn't come near the house anymore. But that was through a series of using on a daily basis, practically. I told them, start doing target practicing in your yard. Let them know that you're armed, and wear it whenever you're outside. Let them know that you have it on you, along with a few other things that you can try. But nothing is 100%. As far as I know, he's still on guard, and this has been about, I think, around 10 years now that we first started talking about it.
Is that Pennsylvania too?
No, he was in Midwest somewhere. I don't know exactly where.
If you say Iowa, I'm just going to freak out and lock on my doors. That's where I'm at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I honestly don't know what state, but yeah, they are in Iowa.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Coonbo was there a few years ago.
What?
Yeah, he was there.
Sorry, I know Bigfoot are in Iowa, but it's just interesting. I'm curious, what have you heard?
Yeah, he and a friend of mine went out. Oh, I wish I knew what specific area of Iowa he was in. I'd have to look at my notes to see where it was. But he was talking about that he found sign. They potentially ran into one while one of the women was in a restroom at the campground. Something came around the side of the bathroom where she could see through the louvers, big hairy feet. And they heard tree knocks and vocals and found prints and a lot of other sign. But I'll have to look at my notes again to see what area of Iowa they were in.
I think I need to have a chat with Mr. Coonbo. I've not talked to him on Bigfoot Societies. We're going to need to make that happen for sure. Yeah. Going back to the Nephilim for just a minute. So when you go out and you're going to research an area where there's been a Bigfoot scene or something like that, do you have in your mind then that, okay, I could be dealing with an undiscovered great ape, or this could be a Nephilim and something highly dangerous? Or is it a thing where certain areas of the country, you may have the one happening than the other?
Initially, my mind is on the physical flesh and blood Bigfoot. That's what I search for. I have not run into the other type yet, and I hope not to. Along with Dogman, I've not run into a Dogman yet, and I don't want to. That's not something I've had any interest in exploring or looking for. I'll look up, history of the area to see if there's other sighting reports whenever I go into an area to see what's going on. I'll look at a map. Google Earth is a great resource. You can really zoom in into areas to see features, along with a topographical map where you can see elevations and see the curvatures of where hillsides and deep valleys are. It helps whenever you're Bigfooting to know these topographical features, because there's certain areas where they seem to hang out a little bit more than others. I look for waterways, primarily rivers or creeks, ponds or lakes also, but running water, more like creeks. I think they seem to prefer a little bit more, but they will hang around the lakes also.
I was reading a report by the NAWAC out of Area X. It's very interesting how, and Dr. Russ Jones pointed this out too, how it almost seems if you find an area with a certain amount of annual rainfall above, I want to say like 35 inches. Have you found that to be true as well? You just stated that you found similarities over the years, but have you found that if the area gets more rain, it could be more fruitful, or any thoughts about that?
I have found that, and Coonbo also did a study on, I think what he did was a study on the numbers of Bigfoot in different areas. And different areas are much more conducive to having a higher population of Bigfoot in them. And it would be areas with a higher instance of rainfall. And fortunately, Western Pennsylvania is an area like that. We do get a high amount of rainfall, maybe not quite as much as the Pacific Northwest, but we do get a pretty good amount. And along with the southern U.S. But then even then, the drier states like Oklahoma and Texas, certain areas of it, there is higher populations of them and a higher number of them in certain areas.
Oklahoma is funny because, yeah, it's a dry, but if you look on a map, mm-hmm. that southeast corner sure gets a lot of rain.
It does.
Those Ouachita Mountains, it's party time for sure.
We found a pretty good amount there. And where we were, we camped in the Chickasaw National Recreation Area. And, oh my, if you're into Bigfooting, go there.
Really?
It's a fantastic area. It really is. The residents, the longtime residents who talk about the Bigfoot, they say the old people, they used to go around, they would sit by the lake and just watch the Bigfoot playing on the other side of the lake, just for fun. Yeah, it's a fantastic area there and along the border, the Texas-Oklahoma border along the Red River. We were along there in another infamous area called Brown Springs. It was pretty creepy there. A lot of weird things going on there.
I've not heard about Brown Springs, and that might be just that I'm still under 5 years in this subject. So I'm not to the 50 that you're at, but I've heard of Area X. I've heard of other places in Oklahoma, but I haven't heard of Brown Springs. Would you be able to share a little bit of info about that?
Brown Springs, a little bit of history about that area is apparently it was a high amount of murders in the area. I don't know if it was mafia or what. I honestly don't recall, but there was a high amount of murders and bodies found in the area, as well as Bigfoot being there. There's a graveyard up on the hill that a lot of ghost hunters will go to, and they'll find a lot of, I'm not into ghost hunting, but apparently it's a good spot for ghost hunting. But the Bigfoot around there are a little more aggressive. The one place that we were at, it was very steep and rutted to get up on the hill. And I'm disabled now. I can't walk or hike like I used to. I said, I'll just stay in the truck and while the rest of you go up there. And the guy said, no, you're coming up. If we have to carry you, you're coming up. We're not going to leave you alone down here. So I said, okay. So I got a couple hiking sticks and hobbled my way up. But it's an area that also Coonbo has told a story about where now I don't know exactly what year this happened, but apparently an FBI agent had contacted him and sent him photos and was consulting with him about two bodies. He wanted to know if Coonbo would have any idea if this was Bigfoot related or not. There was a young couple who had driven into this area around Brown Springs, and they were parking. But apparently a few young male Bigfoot came through and found them. And the young lady was found dead, and the young man was killed also very violently. And
so that's why they didn't leave you alone in the car.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's intense. Oklahoma, you don't mess with Oklahoma for sure.
No.
Wow. Did you guys run into anything yourselves then in that area that was out of the ordinary? Or?
Right there in Brown Springs, we heard a few things and found prints, but that was about it. We had to hurry back to camp. But we were out there for a full week. And whenever I was telling you about purgatory, later that same night, we were on our way back home or back to the camp. And one of the guys in our convoy was having problems with his truck. So we all pulled over into the parking lot of a casino on one of the reservations. And everyone else got out of their trucks, and they all were huddled around his truck looking under the hood. And the four of us in our pickup truck, we just stayed there because we were tired. My sister and I were sitting in the back seat. I was sitting behind the driver, and my sister was sitting behind the passenger, Chuck Schlob's. We were just sitting there, and the driver, he was just sitting there playing on his phone. And my sister, she was doing the same, just playing on her phone. And Chuck and I were both a little bit more experienced, so we knew that it doesn't matter where you're at. Even in the parking lot of a casino, 12:30 at night, brightly lit parking lot, you still stay alert. I was just looking out the window. Here comes a Bigfoot running between the two buildings across the brightly lit parking lot, past the pickup trucks, across a 4-lane highway and into the woods on the other side. Chuck, he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah." Said, "That was a Bigfoot." And boy, he was running. Man, he was really going fast right across that parking lot. Whenever I got back home, I was able to figure out how fast approximately he was running. And what I was able to do was take point A to point B, where he came out of between the buildings to where he disappeared into the woods. And I took that distance along with the time that both Chuck and I agreed on was the amount of time it took him to run from point A to point B, which was about 3 seconds. And so I was able to figure out that he was running approximately 52 miles an hour. So you can pretty much figure why people think that they can take a picture, that they can whip their camera out real fast and take a picture. Well, no, not unless you already have it running and pointed at that area that's about it.
That is simply wild. I want to make sure that we talk about, we haven't really discussed yet about how you're the founder of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. Yep. And I think that's really important. So can you tell me a little bit about the history of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project, how that came into play, what that is exactly, all that good stuff?
Yes, thank you. I'm quite proud of my organization. Whenever I retired from my job in 2014, I was able to devote time and energy into learning more about the Bigfoot. That was whenever I was really able to start digging deeper and get into it. And 2015, I founded the group on Facebook. It began as a discussion group, and it has morphed and changed and grown into almost 18,000 members now. And we have county chapters all over Pennsylvania where I've set different people, chapter leads, to be in those counties, to get witness reports, to investigate Johnny on the spot. Whenever a report comes in, that they're there and that they are someone that the witnesses can talk to in person, a person who lives there, a person who knows the area, rather than myself traveling all over Pennsylvania and not knowing areas and not being able to get there for days or a couple weeks or something. It was more a matter of need and wanting to help people that I formed this and made it grow so much. We've got these county chapters, not quite in every county, but I think we've got almost 40 county chapters now. And there's, wow, I think, some 60 counties in Pennsylvania.
That's a lot going on with the project.
It is, and I'm quite proud of it, and very proud of my people, my chapter leads, and the guys who are in charge of them, because I've just appointed a state director over the county chapters, because between the organization itself and the county chapters, it was getting too much for me alone to handle. So I appointed a friend of mine, Bob Walls, as the state director over the county chapters. And God bless him, he's dedicated and doing a great work.
Do you have an actual live meetup for the project ever?
Yeah, we have campouts occasionally. And in fact, just last weekend, we had a camp out available to all the members over at Salt Fork State Park, which is in Ohio.
Okay.
And we had a really good crowd despite the cold weather and rain and everything. We had, I think, around 60 some people, which was a great turnout, and had a lot of things going on. There were a few sightings, a lot of footprints that were casted, vocals, whistles and eye shine and structures. And it was a fantastic weekend. We like to go there a lot because it is so active there. But this past weekend, it was off the charts. Wow. What was going on.
That sounds fantastic. Is the project open to anyone that would to join that, or what are the requirements for joining the group?
We are primarily on Facebook. We do have a website, Pennsylvania Bigfoot.org. But the website, I think, links the Facebook group because that's where all the activity, that's where all the discussion, that's where all the information is in the Facebook group, unfortunately. And I know there's a lot of people who don't really care for Facebook, and I don't blame them a bit. But that's where I'm able to reach more people and get the information out and gather information on there from people, from witnesses. And what we provide in our group, though, we are a little different from other groups. We offer a safe place. I do not tolerate any type of ridicule or harassment. And unfortunately, trolls will slip in now and then, and they'll make a little trouble. But as soon as we find out, we boot them out immediately. We do not tolerate, because a lot of these witnesses, they've suffered PTSD from their sighting to begin with, a lot of them. And they'll share their stories with their family or their friends, and all they get from them is ridicule from the people who should be supporting them. And so a lot of them, we are the only people that they can share with safely without the fear of ridicule. And I'm proud to say that we do offer that for them.
Yeah, I'm in the group as well, and I can vouch that everything that you have said is 100% true. It's an awesome place to be a part of. Definitely have the link to that in the show notes. But yeah, you guys are doing some awesome stuff with the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project. But Mary, it has been a super fun chat with you. Thank you so much for hanging out tonight. Before we wrap things up, please, if there's anything else that you would want to make sure that people know about what you're up to, anything like that, you feel free to spend a few minutes talking about that right now.
All right. Please join the group if you're able to, and share with us, what any encounters or experiences that you may have had. And even though your audience may not be in Pennsylvania, we have members worldwide. Literally, we've got friends in Australia and Sweden and Scandinavia in general, and Russia. There's a few people from Russia in there. It's a worldwide group. Even though we are Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project, we explore and investigate all over the place. Like I said, I've been out to Oklahoma, down south, Canada, all over the place. But please join us and talk about what's going on. And any questions, go ahead and ask, please.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on, Mary. And we'll definitely be checking back with you in the future to see what other things you have gotten into with your research.
All right. Thank you.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out, trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code Bigfoot Society, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. Here at Bigfoot Society, we're headed to the moon, and here's a current update about going full-time. So here we go. As of 5/22, we are now at 202 patrons out of 824 needed. That's 24.51%, almost a quarter of the way there, guys. Brings us down to 622 left to join the Patreon. So a huge thank you to Barbara, Gregory, Dana, Craig, Jeff, Steve, Ricky D, Norm, Megan, Dan, Daddy Chatty, Joe, Eber, Ike, Jules, Josh, Ryan, Todd, Nathan, Gabe, Bill, Lucky, Megan, William, Bobby Joe, and Inger for joining recently. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.